Thanks for coming back to the channel. I have a whole new batch of stories that were sent in by subscribers, and I'm really looking forward to reading these ones today. Before we get into it, if you enjoy the video, feel free to like and subscribe, and drop a comment down below letting me know what you thought. It genuinely means a lot. Alright, I've got a lot to get through, so let's just go ahead and jump into the first story. The first email is titled, "My study group has been excluding me and submitting work without me, and I have no idea what to do." It comes from a 20-year-old woman. Here's what she wrote. I've been in the same study group since the first week of semester. There are 4 of us total, and up until about 6 weeks ago I genuinely thought things were going well. We'd meet up twice a week in the library, share notes, split up the reading, all of that. I felt like we had a good system. Then I noticed something off. It started small. I'd send a message in the group chat asking what time we were meeting, and nobody would respond for hours. When they finally did, it was usually something vague like, "Oh, we already met up earlier, didn't you see the message?" I never saw the message. I started paying closer attention, and that's when I realised there was a whole separate group chat that I wasn't in. I only found out because one of them, a girl I'll call Priya, accidentally sent a message meant for the other chat into the main one. It was something like, "Did you end up finishing the section she was supposed to do?" She deleted it within about 10 seconds, but I had already read it. I didn't say anything in the moment, I just sat with it. Over the next few days I started piecing things together. They'd been meeting without me and splitting up the work between 3 people instead of 4, which means when it came time to submit, they'd been submitting with my name left off. Or in one case, submitting a version of a shared document that didn't include the parts I'd contributed. I checked the submission portal and sure enough, one of the group assignments from 3 weeks ago had only 3 names on it. Mine wasn't there. Here's what makes this so hard. They still act completely normal when I see them in class. Like nothing is happening, they smile, they wave, they ask how I'm doing. Nobody has said a single word to me about any of this. I don't know if they think I haven't noticed or if they genuinely don't care. Either way, it's been going on for weeks and I've just been going to the regular group chat acting like I have no idea, because I didn't know what else to do. The problem is we have a major group project due in 3 weeks. It counts for a significant portion of our final grade, and I cannot afford to have my name left off of it, or to be handed a grade that doesn't reflect the work I actually do. I don't know whether to confront them directly, go to the professor now, or try to handle it quietly somehow. I've been going back and forth on this for days and I genuinely don't know what the right move is. Any advice would be really appreciated. Okay, so first of all I want to say that this situation would make anyone feel awful. Like there is something uniquely horrible about being excluded by people who are still being nice to your face. That combination of fake warmth and quiet betrayal is just really disorienting, and I completely understand why you've been sitting on this without knowing what to do. But here's the thing. The project in 3 weeks changes this from something you could maybe just let go into something you actually have to address. You cannot go into a major graded assignment not knowing whether your name is going to be on the final submission. That is too much to leave to chance. My honest take is that you should go to your professor before you confront the group. Not because confrontation is wrong, but because you want to have the institution on your side before things get awkward. Go in, explain calmly what you've observed, mention the assignment where your name was already left off, and ask how the course handles situations like this. You don't have to make it dramatic, just lay out the facts. Professors deal with group dynamics going sideways more than you'd think. After that conversation, then you can decide whether to confront Priya and the others directly. By that point, you'll know what your options are, and you won't be walking into a conversation with them from a place of zero leverage. Because right now, if you confront them and they deny it or gaslight you, you have nowhere to go. But if the professor already knows, the whole situation changes. You're not wrong for feeling hurt by this, but protect your grade first. Everything else can come after. Thanks for writing in. Let's get to the next one. The next email is titled, "I found out something about my sister's wedding the night before the ceremony, and I don't know what to do with it." It comes from a 27-year-old man. Here's what he wrote. "My sister is getting married tomorrow. I flew in 2 days ago and everything has been fine on the surface. The rehearsal dinner is tonight. The venue looks great. Her fiancé seems genuinely happy. By all appearances, this is a perfectly normal wedding weekend. Except last night I found out something that I cannot stop thinking about. I was helping my dad carry some things in from the car, and I overheard him on the phone in the garage. He didn't know I was nearby. He was talking to someone, I assume his financial advisor or maybe his accountant, and from what I could piece together, my parents have paid for essentially the entire wedding. Not half, not most of it, all of it. This on its own wouldn't be a problem. My parents are generous people and my sister is their youngest. I wouldn't be surprised if they wanted to contribute heavily. The problem is that for months, every time the topic of wedding costs came up at family dinners or in group chats, my parents have been saying things like, "We're splitting it evenly with his family," or "His parents have been so wonderful about contributing," or "We really couldn't have done this without both families chipping in. His family believes they are splitting this down the middle. His parents believe they contributed significantly." Based on what I heard, that is not what happened. My parents covered everything, and have apparently been letting his family believe otherwise. I don't know why. Maybe my parents didn't want his family to feel indebted. Maybe there was some quiet disagreement early on and my parents just took over without announcing it. Maybe they genuinely thought it didn't matter as long as the wedding happened. I have no idea. But the rehearsal dinner starts in 2 hours and his entire family is going to be there, and they believe something about this wedding that isn't true. I don't even know what I'm asking. I'm not going to blow anything up tonight. I'm not going to pull my dad aside and start a confrontation an hour before everyone arrives. But I don't know what to do with this information. Do I say something to my parents after the wedding? Do I just let it go entirely? Am I making this into a bigger deal than it is? I feel like I'm the only one who knows. Okay, I want to start by saying that you are clearly a thoughtful person, because the first thing you decided was not to blow this up 2 hours before the rehearsal dinner. That is the right call and I respect it. Now, is this a big deal? I think that depends on one thing, whether his family would care if they knew. Because there's a version of this where they find out later, feel embarrassed, and it creates tension in the early years of this marriage. That would be unfortunate. But there's also a version of this where nobody ever finds out the wedding is beautiful, and your parents' reason for doing it quietly was actually generous and well-intentioned. Here's what I'd actually do. After the wedding weekend is over, after the honeymoon photos are posted and things have settled down, I would have a private conversation with your dad, just the two of you. Tell him what you overheard, tell him you're not angry, and ask him what the thinking was. Let him explain. You might find out there's a whole side of the story you don't know. Maybe his family offered and couldn't follow through. Maybe there was a conversation your parents had with them privately that resolved it in a way that doesn't match what you overheard. You genuinely don't know yet. But tonight, just go enjoy your sister's wedding. Be present for her. This problem, if it even is one, will still be there next week. Thanks for sending this in. All right, let's keep going. The next email is called, "My best friend moved in after his mom died and now I feel like a stranger in my own house." It comes from a 19-year-old guy. Here's what he wrote. "Me and my best friend, I'll call him Marcus, have been neighbours since we were both around 6 years old. We grew up on the same street, went to the same schools, played on the same teams. He's been in my life for as long as I can actually remember. When we were 17, his dad left, just packed up and was gone, and Marcus and his mum were on their own after that. My family kind of absorbed them a little. His mum would come over for dinner a couple times a week. Marcus was always welcome at our house, that kind of thing. It was just what you did. His mum passed away about 8 months ago. It was sudden and it was really hard, especially for Marcus because she was the only parent he had left. In the days after it happened, my parents immediately told him he could stay with us while he figured things out. He had nowhere else to go. He's an only child, no close relatives nearby, and he'd been living with his mum right up until the end. Of course I supported that. I wanted him there. That was 8 months ago. He is still here. I want to be really careful about how I say this because I do not want it to come out wrong. I love Marcus. He's my best friend and I am genuinely glad he had somewhere to go. But somewhere around the 4 or 5 month mark, something started shifting and I can't unnotice it. My parents treat him differently than they treat me. Not in a dramatic way, not in a way that anyone would point to and say, look, that's clearly a problem, but in 100 small ways that add up. My mum asks him what he wants for dinner in a tone she doesn't use with me. My dad watches games with him and seems more engaged than he does when I try to watch with them. When Marcus talks at the dinner table, everyone listens attentively in a way that feels different from when I speak. My mum once referred to him as her bonus son out loud, and I just sat there. I've started to feel like a guest in my own house, like I am the one who has to knock before entering a conversation. And the worst part is I feel like a genuinely terrible person for feeling this way. His mum died. He lost everything. What kind of friend resents someone for that? But I do feel it, and I don't know what to do with it. So here is what I want to say first. You are not a bad person, not even close. What you're feeling is not resentment of Marcus's grief. It's a completely natural response to feeling like you've been displaced in a space that is supposed to be yours. Those are two very different things. You're allowed to feel what you feel. That said, I want to gently offer you a reframe because I think it might actually help. Your parents are not loving Marcus more than they love you. What they're doing, almost certainly without even realizing it, is overcorrecting for the fact that he has nothing. They're pouring extra warmth into him because they can see how empty his world has gotten. And because you are their child and they trust that you are secure in their love, you are the one they're not worried about. In a weird way, the fact that they're not hovering over you is because they feel like you're okay. Marcus is the one they're afraid for. None of that makes what you're feeling go away. But I think it reframes where the feeling is coming from. What I would actually encourage you to do is talk to one of your parents privately. Not about Marcus being there too long, not about wanting him gone. Just tell your mum or your dad that lately you've been feeling a little invisible and that you miss having one-on-one time with them. That's it. You don't have to frame it as a problem with Marcus at all. Just be honest about what you need. My guess is that they'd be really surprised to hear it, and they'd want to fix it. You're a good friend. Thanks for writing in. All right. Let's go to the next story. So this next email is titled, "My new supervisor is someone who made my life miserable in middle school, and she has no idea who I am." It comes from a 24-year-old woman. Here's what she wrote. "I spent most of my early 20s trying to break into an industry that I genuinely love. I won't say exactly what field it is, but it's competitive, it's creative, and getting your foot in the door is the hardest part. I applied to dozens of internships over 2 years. I got rejected from most of them and waitlisted from a few. Last month I finally got the one I actually wanted. The company I've admired since I was in my first year of university. I accepted immediately. I was so happy I actually cried. First week went well. The office is great, the work is interesting, and most of my co-workers seem genuinely nice. Then on my third day, I walked into a team briefing and I saw my direct supervisor for the first time. I had only communicated with HR up until that point, so I hadn't met her yet. I recognized her immediately. Her name is different now, married name I assume, but I knew her face the second I walked through that door. She was one of 3 girls who made my life genuinely miserable for about 2 years in middle school. I'm talking coordinated exclusion, rumour spreading, the kind of targeted cruelty that 12 and 13-year-olds are uniquely capable of. I transferred schools partly because of what that group put me through. It was a long time ago and I've done a lot of work to not let it define me, but it happened and I remember it clearly. She looked at me the way you look at a new intern, politely, professionally, with zero recognition whatsoever. As far as I can tell, she has no idea who I am. I've been at this internship for a week and a half now, and I genuinely don't know how to feel or what to do. Part of me is almost relieved that she doesn't remember me because it means I don't have to navigate some awkward acknowledgement of what happened. But another part of me feels something I can't quite name. Not anger exactly, something more complicated than that. I don't want to say anything to her. I don't want to create a problem at a job I worked really hard to get, but I also feel like I'm walking around carrying this thing that she doesn't even know exists. It's a strange feeling. Has anyone ever been in something like this? I don't even know what I'm asking for exactly, I just needed to get it out somewhere. Okay, first, I want to say congratulations on the internship. You worked really hard for it and you deserve to be there. I find it genuinely fascinating in a way that's hard to put into words, because the question of what you owe someone from your past who hurt you, and what you owe yourself in the present, is not a simple one. Here is my honest take. You don't owe her a conversation. You don't owe her the discomfort of watching her face as she either remembers or doesn't. And you especially don't owe her that conversation in a professional setting where the power dynamic is already complicated by the fact that she is your supervisor. That would be an incredibly hard thing to navigate well, and the risk to you is real. But I also want to gently push back on the idea that you have to decide anything right now. You've been there a week and a half. You're still figuring out how you feel. There's no deadline on this. The version of this I'd probably land on, if I were in your shoes, is this. Let the work be the work. Be excellent at your job. Build good relationships with the other people there. Let her be your supervisor and nothing more. You don't have to like her. You don't have to make it weird. You just have to be professional, and that's it. The past is yours to carry or to put down. It doesn't have to enter that office unless you decide you want it to. And who knows? People change. She may be a completely different person than she was at 13. That doesn't erase what happened, but it's worth leaving some space for. Thanks for writing in. All right, let's keep reading. The next email is titled, "My brother has been lying to our parents about being in university for 2 years, and they just announced a surprise visit to his campus." It comes from a 17-year-old guy. Here's what he wrote. "My older brother is 22. He's been my hero for basically my entire life. Like in a very real way, not just as a thing you say. He was the person I looked up to more than anyone. He's smart, he's funny, he always knew what he wanted, and when he got into university 2 years ago, our whole family celebrated like it was the best day we'd ever had. That's why what I'm about to say is so hard to write down. About 4 months ago, I found out completely by accident that my brother is not actually in university. I don't know exactly when he stopped going or if he even started. What I do know is that he's been living in the city for 2 years, working odd jobs and apparently making enough to get by, and he has been lying to my parents about all of it. Every month they transfer money to him for living expenses and tuition. He calls them on Sunday evenings and talks about classes and professors and projects. None of it is real. I found out because I was visiting a friend in the city, and I ran into him at a place he clearly works at regularly. He looked horrified when he saw me. He made me promise not to say anything before I even had time to process what I was looking at. I've kept that promise for 4 months. I don't know why exactly. Loyalty, I guess. Or maybe I just couldn't figure out what to do. Here is the problem. My parents just announced that they are planning a surprise visit to his campus. They want to see where he lives, meet his flatmates, take him out to dinner near the university. They are so proud of him, and they are talking about this trip like it's one of the best things they've done in years. They've already started planning which weekend to go. I don't know what to do. If I stay quiet and this plays out the way it's going to play out, my parents are going to be blindsided in the worst possible way. If I tell them now, I am the one who betrays my brother. If I go to my brother first and tell him what's happening, I'm giving him the chance to either come clean himself or come up with some new lie to buy more time. Every option feels wrong. I've been carrying this for 4 months and I'm exhausted by it. Okay, I want to start by saying that you have been carrying something that was never yours to carry. Your brother put you in this position by asking you to keep his secret, and that was not fair to you. Whatever happens next, I want you to hear that clearly. There is really only one option here that I think you can live with long term. And it's the hardest one. You need to contact your brother before your parents book this trip, and you need to tell him that you cannot keep covering for him anymore. Not as an ultimatum, not as a threat, just as the truth. Tell him what your parents are planning. Tell him you've been holding this for 4 months and it's been too much. And tell him that he needs to be the one to come clean to them before they show up at a university he's not attending. Give him the chance to do the right thing himself. That's the version of this where you're still being a good brother, while also not allowing yourself to be complicit in something that is going to hurt your family. But here is the part I need to say clearly. If he refuses, or if he tries to talk you into staying quiet for another few weeks, or if he promises he'll handle it and then doesn't, then you have to tell your parents. Not because you're betraying him, because watching your parents show up to an empty campus would be far worse for everyone, including him. You're 17 and you've been dealing with this alone for 4 months. That's too much. Talk to your brother. Today if you can. Thanks for writing in. Let's go to the next one. This one came entitled, "My 2 friends had a falling out and everyone is picking sides based on a story that I know isn't fully true." It comes from a 22-year-old woman. Here's what she wrote. "I've had the same core friend group since the first semester of my first year at university. There are 6 of us, and we've been really tight for almost 3 years now. It hasn't always been perfect, but it's generally been a group I trusted and felt safe in. About 6 weeks ago, 2 of them, I'll call them Jade and Remy, had a serious falling out. I don't know exactly what started it, but it escalated fast. Within a week, Jade was telling people in the group privately that Remy had done something genuinely unforgivable, and she needed everyone to know whose side they were on. Remy was doing the same thing on his end, saying Jade had twisted the story completely and that he was the one who had been wronged. The group has basically split. 2 people are firmly on Jade's side, 1 person is firmly on Remy's side, and then there's me. I've been the one everyone expects to stay neutral because I'm probably the closest to both of them individually. Here's what makes my situation different from everyone else's. I know what actually happened. Not a version of it. Not one side of it. I know because I was there for a significant part of it, and I saw things that neither of them has told the rest of the group. What I know is that both of them behaved badly. Not equally, and it's not a perfectly symmetrical situation, but the version that Jade is telling leaves out something she did that directly provoked the situation. And the version that Remy is telling leaves out the fact that his response to that provocation went way further than it needed to. The truth is messy and inconvenient for both of them, which is probably why neither of them is telling it. Meanwhile, everyone around me is picking sides based on incomplete information, and I'm the only one who knows that both stories are missing pieces. I've been asked directly by two different people in the group whose side I'm on, and both times I've deflected. I don't know how long I can keep doing that. I also don't know whether it's my place to tell anyone what I actually know, or whether doing so would just make everything worse. I feel like I'm standing in the middle of a fire holding a piece of information that could put it out or could make it bigger, and I genuinely don't know which. Okay, this is a hard one, and I want to think through it carefully with you. First, I want to acknowledge how exhausting it must be to sit on information like this while people around you are making decisions based on things that aren't fully true. That's a real and legitimate pressure to be under, and I understand why you're struggling with it. Here's my honest take. I don't think your job is to expose either of them to the group. That's not your role, and doing it uninvited could make you the centre of a conflict that isn't yours. But I do think you have a conversation or two that are yours to have, privately, one at a time. I would talk to Jade alone and I would talk to Remy alone, not together, separately. And in each conversation I would say something like, look, I care about you, and I also care about being honest with you. The version of this story that's circulating doesn't fully match what I saw. I'm not going to take sides publicly, but I think you should know that. That puts the information in their hands. What they do with it is up to them. Maybe one of them comes forward and fills in the gaps. Maybe they both stay dug in. But at least you've been honest with them without making yourself the referee for the whole group. The one thing I'd encourage you to resist is the pressure to pick a side when you genuinely know neither side is complete. That's not fence-sitting, that's just integrity. Alright, let's keep going. This one is named "My girlfriend got a huge promotion and I'm proud of her, but something about it is making me feel really small." It comes from a 26-year-old man. Here's what he wrote. "Me and my girlfriend have been together for 2 years. Before we got together, I was in an okay place in my life, but not a great one. I had a job I was fine with, a social life that was decent, and I was kind of just drifting along without much direction. She was in a similar position when we met, and we sort of found each other in that shared mediocrity, if that makes sense. About 8 months ago, her career took off in a way that neither of us fully expected. She got a promotion that came with a significant salary increase, a lot more responsibility, and a new level of confidence that I genuinely hadn't seen in her before. She travels more now. She has an opinion about things in her field that people actually want to hear. She walks into rooms differently than she used to. I am proud of her. I want to be really clear about that because everything I'm about to say is going to sound like the opposite, and it isn't. I am genuinely, truly proud of her. I tell her that regularly. I mean it every time. But something has shifted in how I feel around her, and I don't know what to do about it. I've started to feel like the lesser person in this relationship, like the gap between where she is and where I am has grown in a way I didn't see coming. I catch myself being quieter at dinners when her work friends are around because I don't feel like what I have to say measures up. I've started doing this thing where I downplay my own life when I'm talking to people we both know, like I'm preemptively managing their low expectations of me. I didn't used to do that, and the worst part is that I can feel it changing how I act around her. I'm not as easy to be around as I used to be. I get a little short sometimes. I've become weirdly sensitive to small things she says that I know aren't meant as criticism. I'm doing it, and I can see myself doing it, and I still can't seem to stop. I don't think she's noticed yet, or if she has, she hasn't said anything. But I'm worried about where this goes if I don't figure out how to deal with it. I don't want to become the person in the relationship who resents their partner for being successful. That's not who I want to be. Can you help me understand what's actually happening here? First of all, the fact that you can see this happening in real time, name it clearly, and sit with the discomfort of admitting it. That is actually not a small thing. Most people don't get there until the damage is already done. So take that seriously. What's happening, from where I'm sitting, is that your identity got quietly anchored to a version of your life that no longer matches your current reality. You built your sense of yourself around a certain equilibrium you and your girlfriend had together. When that equilibrium changed, something in you started reaching for something to hold on to. And what it landed on was comparison. And comparison is a terrible anchor, because it only ever makes you feel smaller. The good news is that her growth does not actually say anything about your worth. It just feels that way right now, because you're measuring yourself against her instead of against where you were 6 months ago, or where you want to go. Here is what I'd actually suggest. Don't have a big conversation with her about your insecurity yet. Not because you shouldn't eventually, but because I think what you need first is to make a move in your own life. Not a dramatic one. Just something. Sign up for something you've been putting off. Take a step toward whatever the version of you that you actually want to be looks like. Even a small one. Because what's driving this isn't really about her. It's about the fact that you drifted before you met her and you're still drifting now and watching. Her fine direction has made that feeling louder. The insecurity will quiet down when you give yourself something to be building toward. I really believe that. Thanks for sending this in. Let's read another one. The next email is titled, I accidentally saw something on my mum's phone 3 weeks ago, and I haven't been able to stop thinking about it. It comes from a 15-year-old girl. Here's what she wrote. About 3 weeks ago, I was using my mum's phone to look something up because mine was dead. She had given it to me willingly, she was in the other room, and I wasn't snooping. But while I was on her phone, a message came in from someone I didn't recognise, and I accidentally saw the preview before I could look away. The message said something like, I know it's scary, but some countries have really good relocation support for families. You wouldn't be starting from scratch. I put the phone down and pretended I hadn't seen anything. My mum came back into the room a few minutes later, and she seemed completely normal. She had no idea I'd seen it. I've been thinking about it ever since. I've gone back and forth between telling myself it means nothing and spiralling into what it could mean. The most obvious interpretation is that my mom has been talking to someone, a friend or maybe a professional of some kind, about possibly moving our family to another country. What I don't know is whether this is a serious plan or just something she's been venting about or daydreaming about. I don't know if my dad knows. They seem fine together. They seem like a completely normal couple. But I've been watching them more closely these past 3 weeks, and I honestly can't tell. I haven't said anything to either of them. I don't know how I would even bring it up without explaining that I saw a message I wasn't supposed to see, even though I didn't mean to. And part of me is scared that if I ask and it turns out to be real, then suddenly it becomes real. Like right now, I can still tell myself I probably misread the situation. But if I ask and my mum confirms it, there's no taking that back. I'm 15. I've lived in this house my whole life. My friends are here. My school is here. Everything is here. And I've been sitting with this by myself for 3 weeks, and I don't know what to do. Okay, I want to start by saying that 3 weeks is a long time to hold something like this alone at 15. That's a lot of weight for one person. I also want to say something that I genuinely mean. One message that you accidentally glimpsed the preview of is not a lot to go on. The context you don't have is enormous. You don't know who sent it, what the full conversation was, or whether your mum was venting, processing an idea, or actively planning something. You're working with about 12 words, and your own imagination has been filling in the rest for 3 weeks. That's a really stressful way to live. Here's what I'd encourage you to do. Find a quiet moment with your mom, just the two of you, and tell her that you've been feeling a little unsettled lately about the future. You don't have to mention the message at all. Just open a door, see what she says. A lot of times parents are carrying things they would actually tell their kids if the conversation started naturally, and they're just waiting for the right moment. You might find that this is nothing. You might find that there's something real happening that your parents were planning to talk to you about soon anyway. Either way, carrying it alone for another 3 weeks isn't going to feel any better. Start the conversation. You deserve to not be alone with this. Thanks for writing in. Let's keep going. This email is titled, I started a business with my best friend and realised I'm the only one actually running it. It comes from a 23-year-old man. Here's what he wrote. About a year ago, I quit my job to start a small business with my closest friend. I won't go into the specifics of what we do, but it's a service-based business. And it required a real leap of faith for both of us. We put in money, we put in time, we built it from scratch together. Or at least that's how it started. The business is doing well. Better than either of us projected, honestly. We've got regular clients, we're profitable, and from the outside it probably looks like a real success story. Here's the part nobody sees. Somewhere around the 5 or 6 month mark, my business partner, I'll call him Sam, started checking out. Not dramatically. It happened gradually. He stopped responding to client emails as quickly. He started missing calls we'd agreed to be on together. He'd say he was working on something, and then I'd find out later it hadn't been touched. I picked up the slack without saying much about it at first because I figured he was having a rough patch and I didn't want to make it into a thing. That was about 5 months ago and nothing has changed. I am running this business, I am handling the clients, managing the finances, doing the outreach, following up on everything. Sam sends some messages here and there and shows up when I specifically ask him to, but the engine of this thing is me, and I think we both know it, even though neither of us has said it out loud. The business we built together is succeeding. But I built the version of it that's succeeding, and Sam is receiving an equal share of that. I've been thinking about this for months and I keep getting stuck on the same thing. This person is my closest friend. We've been close since we were teenagers. Starting this business together was a dream we both had. If I confront him about pulling back, I risk the friendship. If I try to restructure the arrangement financially, things could get ugly. And if I do nothing, I burn out and probably start resenting him and lose the friendship anyway. I don't even know if ending the partnership is possible without a legal mess. I don't know how to have this conversation. I just know that I can't keep doing this indefinitely and something has to change. Okay, I think you already know what the core issue is here, and I think you already know what you have to do. The fact that you're writing this email tells me you've been sitting on it long enough. Here's the thing about business partnerships. The longer a real imbalance goes unaddressed, the harder it gets to address because resentment builds on one side and comfortable dependence builds on the other. 5 months in, this is still fixable. In another 5 months, it might not be. You need to have a direct conversation with Sam, not an accusatory one, not a here's everything you've done wrong kind of conversation. A genuinely honest one. Something like, I want to talk about how we're dividing the work because I don't think it's been even for a while and I'm starting to feel the strain of that. I care about this business and I care about us. And I think we need to find a structure that actually works for both of us long term. Give him the chance to respond. He might surprise you. He might have something going on in his personal life that's been pulling him under, and he hasn't known how to tell you. Or he might confirm that his investment in this has genuinely decreased, and then you have real information to work with when it comes to restructuring things. On the legal side, if you built the business without a formal partnership agreement, that's the first thing to fix going forward, regardless of how this conversation goes. Get something in writing that reflects the actual division of labour and ownership. It protects both of you. The friendship is worth the hard conversation. The alternative is watching it erode from the inside without either of you saying anything. Thanks for writing in. Let's go to the next story. By the way, if you have a story you want me to read, you can send it to the email in the description. The next email is titled, My boyfriend's best friend has never liked me, and last weekend he humiliated me in front of a group and my boyfriend laughed. It comes from a 21-year-old woman. Here's what she wrote. My boyfriend and I have been together for 2 years. For the most part, it's been a really good relationship. We communicate well, we have fun together, we're building something that feels genuinely solid. There's really only one thing that's been a consistent source of tension, and his name is Derek. Derek has been my boyfriend's best friend since they were in secondary school. I understand that. I respect the history. I've never asked my boyfriend to choose or given him an ultimatum or any of that. I've always been clear that I want him to have his friendships and I'm not threatened by them. The problem is that Derek has never liked me. He's made that clear in 100 small ways over 2 years. He doesn't include me in conversations when we're in a group. He references things from their friendship in ways that are clearly designed to remind me that I'm on the outside of something. He makes little comments sometimes that have just enough plausible deniability that you can't call them out without seeming oversensitive. I've let all of it go, not because it didn't bother me, but because I knew it wasn't worth making my boyfriend feel like he had to choose sides. Last Saturday we were out with a group that included Derek and a few of his friends I don't know well. We were all at a table together and I said something. I made a joke that I thought landed, and Derek looked at the people around him and said something like, "Yeah, she does that, just ignore it." Like explaining a quirk of a child to other adults, right there in front of everyone. The table went quiet for a second. My boyfriend laughed. Not a big laugh. More of a nervous reflex laugh, but he laughed. I didn't say anything in the moment. I just kept going and got through the rest of the evening. But I've been thinking about it ever since, and something about that night crossed a line for me in a way the other things haven't. It wasn't just Derek this time. It was my boyfriend laughing. I don't know how to talk to him about it without it turning into a big thing about Derek. And honestly, I'm also not sure if I'm overreacting. I just know that I feel differently this time than I have before. You are not overreacting. What Derek said was dismissive and condescending, and he said it in front of people specifically to embarrass you. That's not a small thing dressed up as a joke. It was a choice, and he made it deliberately. But the part about your boyfriend is the part I actually want to focus on, because I think that's the part that's really hurting you. In a moment where you'd just been publicly dismissed by his best friend in front of a group of strangers, he laughed. Not because he's cruel, probably because he was uncomfortable and defaulted to making it smooth with Derek the way he always has. But the impact of that on you is real, regardless of his intention. You were at a table full of people you didn't know, and the person who was supposed to have your back laughed. You need to tell him how that moment felt, not as a Derek conversation, not as an ultimatum about the friendship, just this specific moment. Something like, I need to talk about something that happened Saturday. When Derek made that comment and you laughed, I felt really alone. I'm not asking you to end the friendship. I'm just telling you how it felt. Most people, when they understand the actual impact of what they did, want to do better. Give him the chance. And if Derek keeps doing this after your boyfriend knows how it lands, that's a different conversation. All right, next one. This one is named, My company is relocating to a city near my hometown, and I don't know if staying behind is brave or just me being scared. It comes from a 29-year-old man. Here's what he wrote. About 3 years ago, I moved to a city about 4 hours from where I grew up to take a job that I was really excited about. I won't lie, part of the appeal was also the move itself. I grew up in a small town and I'd wanted to leave for a long time. The job was a good reason to finally do it. The 3 years since have genuinely been the best of my life. I built a life there from scratch. I have friends who actually feel like my people in a way that my friendships back home never quite did. I know my neighbourhood, I have routines I love, I finally feel like an adult in the truest sense, like someone who chose where he is instead of someone who just ended up there. 2 months ago, my company announced that it's relocating. Not shutting down, not doing layoffs, just moving the operation to a different city. The city they're moving to happens to be about 40 minutes from my hometown. They're offering everyone transfers with full relocation packages. It's a generous offer, and I know that. My job is good, it pays well, and my manager has been supportive of me throughout my time there. The rational case for taking the transfer is genuinely strong. But the city they're moving to is where I spent 18 years trying to figure out who I was and mostly failing. It's where I felt stuck before I found a way to get unstuck. It's where some versions of me live that I'm not in a rush to revisit. I've been going back and forth for weeks. If I take the transfer, I keep the job, and I move back to a place that represents everything I was running from. If I don't take the transfer, I stay in the city I love, and I start a job search from scratch in a competitive market. Neither option is clearly better. What I keep coming back to is this question that I can't answer. Is staying in my city the brave thing, or is it just the comfortable thing? And is going back home a mature decision, or is it just giving up? I've been sitting with this one for a while, and I want to try to be actually useful to you here, rather than just saying follow your gut, which I know doesn't help. Here is what I notice in the way you wrote this email. You spent 3 sentences describing the transfer, and about 12 describing what leaving your city would cost you. You described your current life with warmth and specificity. You described the transfer option with words like rational and generous, which are accurate but not exactly the language of someone who's leaning that way. I think you already know what you want to do. I think the question you're actually wrestling with is whether you're allowed to want it, whether choosing your city over your job security is responsible or just self-indulgent. Here's my honest take. You're 29. If you're ever going to take a risk on yourself, now is the time. A job search from scratch is hard. It might take longer than you want and it might be stressful. But you built a life in that city once from nothing. You know you're capable of that. And the version of you that exists there now is clearly one worth protecting. Going back to your hometown is not inherently giving up. But going back because you were scared to try something hard would feel like it. And I think you know the difference. Stay if staying is what you actually want. Let yourself want things. The next email is titled, My younger brother has a stutter and last weekend he did a stand-up comedy set in front of 60 people without telling anyone. It comes from a 24-year-old man. Here's what he wrote. My younger brother is 21. His name is Daniel and he's had a stutter since he was a little kid. I want to be careful about how I write this because I don't want it to sound like I'm making his stutter the whole of who he is, because it isn't. He's one of the funniest people I've ever met. He's genuinely kind in a way that doesn't seem to cost him anything. He reads constantly and remembers everything he reads. He's a better person than most of the people I know, by a significant margin. But the stutter has shaped his life in ways that are hard to overstate. Growing up, he was bullied for it. Not every day, not relentlessly, but enough. He got quiet in class early on. He stopped volunteering to speak. He started finding ways to move through social situations that minimized how much talking was required. By the time he was in his mid-teens, he had this whole architecture built around avoiding moments where he might stutter in front of people. I watched all of this from close by, and I never fully knew what to do with it. You can't fix something like that for someone. You can just try to be the kind of person they feel safe around. About 3 weeks ago, he texted me out of nowhere and asked if I was free on a Saturday night. He said there was something happening at a bar nearby and he wanted me to come. He was vague about what it was and I didn't push. I showed up. It was an open mic night. I still didn't fully understand why we were there until about 20 minutes in, when the host called Daniel's name and my brother walked up to a microphone in front of maybe 60 or 70 people and did a 7-minute stand-up comedy set. I did not know he had signed up for this. He had not told me. I found out later he hadn't told anyone in our family. He had just gone and done it. He stuttered during the set. Of course he did. But he had written the material in a way that worked with it somehow. There was a bit where he leaned into the stutter deliberately, and the room laughed in the way you laugh when something is both true and unexpectedly beautiful. I don't know how else to describe it. He held that room. I stood in the back and I didn't let him see me until it was over. I wasn't sure if he'd want me there or if knowing I was watching would have thrown him off. When he came off stage, I was waiting and I just said I was really glad I came, and he kind of looked at me for a second and then we just stood there for a minute. I don't have a lot to add here because I think you told that story exactly right, but I'll say this. What your brother did took a kind of courage that most people never find. Not the loud kind of courage where everyone cheers for you before you begin. The quiet kind where you go sign yourself up for the thing you're most afraid of and you don't tell anyone because telling someone would give you a reason to back out. He did it alone, and then he did it in front of 60 people, and he held the room. The detail that got me most was that he wrote the material in a way that worked with the stutter. That's not someone managing a limitation. That's someone who has thought so carefully about who they are that they found a way to make the thing that held them back into the thing that made the room listen. I think you already know what a remarkable person your brother is, but I'm glad you wrote this down. Thanks for sending it in. Let's read the next one. This one is titled, My Roommate Came Out as Transgender, and I've been supportive to his face, but privately I'm struggling in ways I don't know how to talk about. Here's what he wrote. I don't really know how to start this, so I'm just going to say it. My roommate came out to me as transgender about 2 months ago. He was born female and he now identifies as male. I'll call him by the name he asked me to use, which is Elliot. When he told me, I said the right things. I told him I supported him and that nothing would change between us, and I meant it. I genuinely meant it in that moment. Elliot is a good person and a good roommate, and I care about him. But privately, and I've never said this to anyone, I've been struggling in ways I don't fully understand. It's not anger. I want to be clear about that. I don't feel angry at Elliot at all. But I've been confused in a way that I can't seem to talk myself out of, and the confusion has started to feel like something heavier. I catch myself saying the wrong pronoun in my head sometimes and then feeling guilty about it. I've been reading things online trying to understand, and sometimes the things I read make me feel worse rather than better. I've had questions that I've been too embarrassed to ask anyone, questions that I'm afraid would make me sound like a bad person just for having them. The thing that's been eating at me the most is this. I don't know if what I'm experiencing is normal confusion that just takes time, or if it means something worse about who I am. Am I struggling to accept this because it's genuinely new to me, and I just need time? Or does the fact that I'm struggling at all mean that I'm not actually as accepting as I thought I was? I don't know how to tell the difference. I haven't pulled away from Elliot. I've tried really hard not to let any of this show. But I feel like I'm walking around with this internal experience that I can't share with anyone because the moment I try to describe it, it sounds terrible even to me. I just want to understand what's happening in my own head. and I don't know where to go with that. Okay, I want to start by saying that writing this email was the right thing to do, and I don't think it makes you a bad person. Not even a little. Here is something I think is really important for you to hear. There is a significant difference between struggling to understand something new and rejecting it. Those two things feel similar from the inside, but they are not the same thing. You said yourself that you're not angry. You said you care about Elliot. You said you've been trying. That's not the behavior of someone who is hateful. That's the behavior of someone who is working through something genuinely unfamiliar and doing it privately because they're afraid of saying the wrong thing. The guilt you feel about getting the pronoun wrong in your own head, the discomfort you feel when you read things online and still come away confused, none of that is evidence that you're a bad person. It's evidence that you're taking it seriously enough to feel bad when you fall short of where you want to be. People who don't care don't feel guilty. You're feeling guilty because you do care. What I'd actually encourage you to do is find a way to get some of these questions answered, not from random corners of the internet, but from a real source. A counsellor, a university resource, a trusted person who has more experience with this than you do. You don't have to have everything figured out, you just need somewhere to put the questions that isn't your own head at 2 a.m. And for what it's worth, I think Elliot is lucky to have a roommate who is trying this hard to get it right. Thanks for sending this one in. Let's go to the next story. It's titled, I've been estranged from my father for 4 years, and I just found out he's seriously ill, and I don't know what I'm supposed to feel. It comes from a 28-year-old woman. Here's what she wrote. 4 years ago, I made the decision to cut contact with my father. I didn't make it lightly. It came at the end of a long stretch of years where the relationship had caused me more pain than I felt equipped to keep absorbing. I won't go into the specific details here, but I will say that my reasons were real. They were mine, and they were enough. The people in my life who knew the full picture supported the decision. I did the work of grieving what I'd hoped the relationship could have been, and eventually I got to a place of something close to peace with it. Last week, a family member reached out to tell me that my father was recently diagnosed with a serious illness. I won't say what it is, but it's the kind of thing that changes the shape of a person's future in ways that are hard to come back from. Since I found out, I haven't been able to stop thinking about it. And the thing that's been hardest to sit with is that I can't tell what I'm actually feeling or what any of it means. Part of me feels something that might be grief. Not for the illness exactly, but for something older than that. The version of a father I always wanted and never had. Part of me feels guilt, which I resent feeling because I don't think I've done anything wrong. Part of me feels a pull to reach out that I can't entirely explain, and part of me, a quieter part, feels nothing at all about him specifically, and is mostly just tired of having to keep figuring out how to feel about this man. What I keep getting stuck on is this question. If I reach out, why am I actually doing it? Is it because I genuinely want to, or is it because I'm afraid of how I'll feel later if I don't? Is there a version of reaching out that would be for me, not for him? Or would any contact just reopen something I spent years carefully closing? I don't want anyone to tell me what to do. I just want help thinking through it. Okay. I want to respect what you asked for and help you think through it rather than hand you a conclusion. The question you're sitting with, whether reaching out would be genuine or just fear of future regret, is one of the most honest questions a person can ask themselves in a situation like this. Most people don't even get that far. They act on guilt and call it love, or they stay away out of self-protection and call it boundaries. You're trying to figure out which one is actually driving you. That matters. Here is something worth sitting with. Regret and genuine desire are both real motivations, and neither one is automatically more valid than the other. Reaching out because you don't want to carry the weight of not having done so is not a shameful reason. It's a human one. The question isn't whether your reason is pure, it's whether the action itself would serve you. Only you can answer whether reopening contact with this person, even briefly, would give you something or cost you something. And you know things about this relationship and about yourself that I don't. What I gently push back on is the idea that there's a single right answer here that you'll find if you just think hard enough. There might not be. Some of these situations don't resolve cleanly. What I'd actually suggest is that you sit with it a little longer before doing anything, not forever, but a few more weeks. Let the initial shock of the news settle, and if the pull to reach out is still there after that, it's probably worth paying attention to. If it fades, that's information too. Whatever you decide, it sounds like you've already done the harder work of protecting yourself for 4 years, That doesn't disappear no matter what you choose next. Thanks for trusting me with this one. All right, one more. The last email is titled, "My girlfriend told me her brother is really struggling and asked me not to reach out to him, but I'm not sure I can keep doing nothing." It comes from a 19-year-old guy. Here's what he wrote. "My girlfriend and I have been together for about a year. Things between us are really good. But this email isn't really about us. It's about her older brother, who I'll call Noah. I've known Noah since pretty early in the relationship because he and my girlfriend are close and she wanted us to meet. I liked him immediately. He's funny in that dry, understated way that takes you a minute to catch. He's thoughtful. He asks good questions and actually listens to the answers. Over the past year, we've built something that feels like a real friendship, separate from my relationship with his sister. We've hung out just the two of us a handful of times and it's always been genuinely good. About 3 weeks ago, my girlfriend sat me down and told me she was worried about Noah. She said he'd lost his job a few months ago and hadn't been able to find anything since. She said he'd been pulling back from people, cancelling plans, going quiet for stretches of time. She said there were moments where he'd said things that made her think he was in a darker place than he was letting on. She was scared for him, and she needed to tell someone. She also asked me not to reach out to him directly. She said she didn't want him to feel like she'd been talking about him behind his back, and she was worried that if I suddenly appeared out of nowhere trying to check in, he'd know she'd said something and it would make things worse between them. I understood her reasoning. I agreed in the moment. But since then I've been sitting with it and I'm not sure I still agree. Because here's the thing, Noah doesn't know that I know any of this, but I do know. And every day I don't reach out, I'm making an active choice to stay away from someone I actually care about, who might be struggling badly. My girlfriend's concern is real and I respect it. But I keep thinking about what it would mean to him to hear from a friend right now, out of nothing more complicated than just wanting to check in. Is respecting my girlfriend's boundary the right thing here? Or is it just the easier thing? This is a genuinely difficult situation, and I want to be careful about how I answer it because I think both things you're weighing are real. Your girlfriend's concern is legitimate. She knows her brother better than you do, and if she thinks direct contact from you right now would make him feel exposed, she's probably basing that on something. Relationships between siblings have a texture that people on the outside can't always read accurately, and her asking you to hold back is not an unreasonable thing to ask. At the same time, I hear what you're saying about the active choice of staying away. There's a version of respecting a boundary that slides quietly into just doing nothing when doing something might actually matter, and I think you're right to notice that distinction. Here's where I'd land on this. I don't think you should reach out to Noah right now without talking to your girlfriend again first. But I do think you should go back to her and tell her what you told me. Tell her that you've been sitting with her request, and you keep coming back to the same thing, that you care about Noah as a friend independent of her, and that staying completely silent feels wrong to you. Not accusatory, not pressuring her to change her mind, just honest. Maybe she'll hear that and give you her blessing to send him a low-key message. Maybe she'll tell you more about why she feels so strongly. Either way, you'll have more to work with than you do right now. The fact that you're thinking this carefully about it tells me you'll handle it well whatever you decide. And that's it for this video. Thank you for listening.